Hello, everyone. My name's Meg Wilding, and I work for McIntyre Charity as a health and wellbeing facilitator. I also lead on the Victoria Stuart project here at McIntyre. I've been lucky to be involved in the All Together groups where we've co-produced the toolkit. And today I'm here in conversation with my fabulous colleague, Rachel Furniss, who's also a health and wellbeing facilitator here at McIntyre. But Rachel's also been using the toolkit, and I just thought it'd be really interesting to hear from Rachel about what she thought and how she got on using the resource. So, hi, Rach.
Hi.
So, you've been using the toolkit here at McIntyre, and I know you've been doing it alongside the Dine to Talk project work that you've been doing. And I just wondered, how did you get on using it?
Oh, I loved it. I have obviously been part of the Dying to Talk project as well, which ran in McIntyre, which was trying to open conversations up around death and dying. And we always came across stumbling blocks around how do we broach the topic of death and how do we discuss end of life planning and things like that. And we did a really good job, but it needed still a lot of work. And this is where the Victoria Stuart project kind of came in and was really helpful for me as one of the leads on the Dying to Talk project. And what I love is one of them was the funeral planning and critical illness planning.
That's right.
And
yeah, and also our Let's Talk funeral cards.
Yeah, and what I loved is I printed all the toolkit out and laid it on the table, and obviously the people who I was working with, they came into the room and they knew exactly what I was talking about. There was no fluff around it. There wasn't, oh, we'll probably talk about this and we'll probably talk about that. There was pictures of cremation. There was pictures of burial. There was pictures of medications and injections, and they knew exactly what they was going to talk about, and they felt empowered because they was able to take some of these pictures and pick the ones they wanted to talk about at that moment in time. And which was really strange, it was that the staff was really quite, oh, I don't think they'll talk about this today. And I went, just let people talk. If they want to talk, they want to talk. If they don't, they can screw it up and chuck it across the room. They don't have to talk to me. And I started off with two people who were supported by McIntyre, and eventually by the end of the day I ended up with 5 or 6 because people just kept, lack of a better word, wandering in and go, what are you talking about? And we started talking, and yeah, the conversations just opened up so quickly. It was, yeah, I love them. I love them. And I love the way of documenting it as well, because it was so easy to document because that certain picture had the documentation side by side, and you had a lot of space to write, and either you could write it, the person who I was working with could write it, or I could record it and just sit and have that conversation and then go back to the recording and fill everything in. So yeah, I loved it. I mean, some of the pictures I thought, oh my gosh, they look quite graphical.
Yeah, definitely, especially when it comes to cremation pictures, etc. I think they're the photos and illustrations that we'd had the most, I want to say, controversy over, because people supported that saw it was like, wow, and knew exactly what it was, but staff felt quite upset in a like, oh sort of feeling around it, when it's quite different to see those differing opinions and that contrast. And it just shows we got it right. If people who we support at McIntyre have that positive effect by that photo, then that's what we want.
Exactly, because a lot of people who I was working with at the time thought that cremation, they didn't quite get what cremation was. They knew you didn't go in the ground, they knew you wasn't being buried, and they knew you was set on fire, but they didn't quite get the process. And when those pictures came up with the coffin going into the oven with the flames, it was very much, oh, that's what happens. And like you say, I felt quite uncomfortable because it was such a graphical picture. But the people who I was working with, they thought it was amazing. I know staff walked in and they was like, what are you doing? What's that picture all about? And I went, oh, it's all about cremation, and we're going to explain cremation now. And they felt uncomfortable. So I think it very much is people supported, or people who we're trying to work with to get this information out of, they found them really, really helpful. And I think that training for staff, that sometimes you have got to be blunt, you have got to see exactly what's going off. I loved it. I loved it.
And that sort of leads me into my next question of how did you find the people you supported to use those pictures found it? And it sounds genuinely quite a positive experience.
I thought I visited the learning centres where I actually did the work. I visited them afterwards, quite recently, as of yesterday, for Pancake Day, and I walked in the way, "You're the deaf lady. Do you know so and so's died?" And oh, I've told my mum I want to be cremated, and it was really empowering, both for myself and them, because one, I had the support and resources to hand with the toolkit. I knew exactly what I was going to discuss, and there was no, oh, I'll have to go and find this out, or I'll have to go and find that out. Everything was there already. And the people who I was working with, people who joined our support, who I was working with, they knew exactly what was going on. They knew from the pictures, and if I didn't know an answer, I was straight on Google, because I could get that information quite quickly. So yeah, and I think every topic, or just about every topic, was covered. And what I really found interesting was how much people understood around the different types of funeral and the clothing. So there's one picture on one of the funeral planning is, what would you like people to wear to your funeral? Now, me, I wear a lot of black. That's my colour. That's my go-to colour for everything. But I think when I die, I wanted everybody to be bright and colourful. And the group was very much split. So I did a conversation within the group that I just sat and listened to everybody talking. So there was nothing on me to actually say whether things were right or wrong. They had that discussion. And again, half of the group that picked just to wear suit and tie changed their mind and went, well, no, if you can wear anything, let anybody wear anything. Let them be comfy. Let them be happy. We did have some people who said, no, you have to wear a suit and tie. And I said, that's absolutely fine. That's your choice. That's what you want. And I think they felt empowered as well, because they was being listened to, and they had that opportunity to talk about death. Because both within the Dying to Talk project and on this project, that I think personally I found that we try and protect people and not discuss those topics, and
yeah, we don't want to upset people. We're, you know, as McIntyre say, we want gloriously ordinary lives for people, but you know, death is inevitable for all of us, isn't it? You know, that is part of having a gloriously ordinary life, is knowing and understanding death and having that choice. If you want to have that choice, don't, you know, there's some people that don't want any say in it whatsoever, and that's completely right as well. And just from listening to you as well, Rachel, I wonder if then people had, if you ever had the opportunity to talk about it before, whether they'd ever actually really been allowed to think about it and had that safe space where they could just say, you know, I want this, and for someone else to, the fact that someone else has said something, well, no, I want something completely opposite, is amazing in itself.
And going back to the point you made about having a choice, there was one lady when I walked into the day service, and staff went, please don't talk to her. She doesn't like to talk about death. She gets very upset. She's had a recent death in the family. Please don't talk to her. And again, that just put that barrier straight up. And these have not done that training. They've not done the Victoria Stuart or the Dying to Talk approach. So when we actually sat down in a small group in a separate room, this lady inevitably walked in, sat down, had a cry. She did cry, but we didn't, don't fear the tears. We actually supported her through being upset, being emotional. But when she left that room, she felt quite empowered and was happy. And yesterday I sort of went in and I did speak to her and said, how are you doing? And she went, oh, I've talked to my mum. I want to be buried. I want a bright red coffin and a big headstone, and I want a wedding cake. She doesn't want a normal cake or buffet. She wants a big wedding cake at her funeral. And she wouldn't have had that opportunity to discuss if I'd have listened to all the staff and say, as soon as she walked into that room, go, sorry, no, you're not allowed in here, you're not allowed to talk to that. So it's that, it's making staff aware that sometimes people just need that space to talk. And
absolutely,
the project gave that opportunity, so it was amazing.
And it just leaves me on then, Rach, to my final question, which is, how do you think this is going to help McIntyre as a whole? How do you think it's going to be of benefit and a use to everyone at McIntyre and other organisations? I know we're a co-applicant with Dimensions as well.
I think anything that opens conversations up around death and dying is only a positive for people, both with learning disabilities, autism, even down to opening the conversations up to children and the elderly. I think this toolkit will not only work for people with a learning disability, I think it will work for everybody. And that's what's so unique about this, because it is pictures, there's no heavy text. And I know McIntyre, we have our plans for before and after I die, and they are in easy read, but they're quite heavy documents. It is quite, I think it's around 50 pages long, where we record everything. Whereas the Victoria Stuart cards and plans are very much one page for each topic. So yes, you're probably going to have 150 pages you've got to fill in, but you can not cherry pick. The people who support it can cherry pick what they want to talk about at that moment in time, and you eventually work through them all. And I mean, the medication section, for instance, I think there's about 5 or 6 pages to that, and it goes into depth about tablets, oxygen, catheters, injections. And what was really nice about that is, instead of it being on one full page of easy read, it was individual pages, and you could just only talk about catheters, you could only talk about injections, and that opened conversations into more depth. Yes, I've used our plans for after I die to fill all that information in afterwards, just for a quick grab sheet for the staff to quickly look through, instead of having to go through all the 50, 60, 70 pages of the other parts of the plans. But yeah, I think I just love it, and I can't.
That's what I was really. Yeah, that's what I was really excited about, and it's strange to be excited, but when it came to the terminal illness section of and goals of the project, it was proving difficult, because you can't make those choices unless you're living through that, because your choices are going to be different. But what we did was we looked at all the different things like hospice, hospital, like you say, injections, oxygen masks, things that could occur if you live in. And I just think they're just going to become so handy to start those conversations when filling out people's health passports or filling out their health baselines. You know, we're going to get a real understanding of, okay, so you might have to go to hospital, and how does that make you feel? What could make that experience better? What is it that you find challenging about going to a hospital, to be able to then, you know, ask for those reasonable adjustments when you're pre-planning all these things. That's a section that I'm particularly looking forward to using at McIntyre and excited about.
And it, like you said, Meg, it can double up as quite a, it's not just for end of life planning, it can be for everything. I do think the project, the Victoria Stuart project, and all the plans and all the resources you've got can double up as a lot of other useful information for other parts of health and wellbeing. So yeah, I'm really excited to use them throughout the health and wellbeing team at McIntyre.
Absolutely, and you can just sense that in the way that you're talking, and just a massive thank you, Rach. Thank you very much, because you've been so involved in the project for us, and I just think lots of people are going to find this really useful, and I know here at McIntyre we're really looking forward to and getting our heads together of how we're going to roll it out across our organisation. So thanks again, Rach.
No, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do it, because I think it's furthered my knowledge, my experience, and I know I'm being very selfish here, but my ability to communicate with people within McIntyre and open those conversations up. So it's made my job a little bit easier. So thank you.
Thanks, Rach. And thank you to all of you that have taken the time to stop and listen to mine and Rachel's conversation. We really do appreciate it. And I do hope that you have got a lot out of listening to us and listening to our experience, and that it's encouraged you to pick up the toolkit and give it a go.